The storm has not yet come, but its shadow has already fallen. The cries of Job still echo through the hills of Uzi, cries that pierced heaven and returned unanswered. 7 days of silence gave birth to lament, and lament has become the language of his soul. The ashes where he sits are cold now, yet the memory of fire lingers in the air. His body is broken, his heart a battlefield between faith and despair. Around him sit 3 men, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, friends once drawn by compassion, now burdened by confusion. They came to comfort him, but found their own beliefs trembling before his pain. They cannot understand a world where the righteous suffer, where faith bleeds and yet refuses to die. To them, suffering must have a reason, pain must have a cause, justice must fit within the laws of men. But Job's wounds have opened a mystery too vast for doctrine to hold. This is not merely a conversation among friends. It is the clash between human reason and divine silence, between the comfort of certainty and the courage to question, between the theology of men and the truth of God. And as they speak, the air begins to change. The light dims. The wind carries something new, a trembling in creation itself. For beyond their words, beyond the dust and the doctrine, something ancient is stirring. This is the counsel of men before the voice of God. This is the counsel of the wise. The sun rose pale over Uzi, washed of color, as though the sky itself had grown weary of watching men suffer. Morning light pressed gently against the ruins, hesitant, dim, unwilling to shine too brightly on what remained. The ashes where Job sat were colder now, the fires long extinguished, yet the smoke of his lament still lingered in the air, a gray veil that refused to lift. Around him, silence had settled into a kind of order. Stones lay where they had fallen. The wind carried the scent of dust and salt. Every so often, a crow circled high above, its cry cutting through the stillness before fading into distance again. Job's friends remained near, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, 3 men of reputation and learning, wise in their own eyes, sincere in their desire to help, yet unequipped for the weight of this mystery. They had come to comfort him, and instead found themselves undone by the depth of his pain. For 7 days they had sat beside him, speechless, letting the heaviness of his sorrow fill the air between them. Now they had heard his cry, his questions, his defiance. They had seen the wreckage of a man once called righteous, a man whose very name was a proverb for goodness. And they did not know what to do with him anymore. The silence stretched, thin and fragile, until Eliphaz, the eldest, could bear it no longer. His hands trembled slightly as he drew his cloak around him and lifted his head. When he spoke, his voice carried the measured tone of one accustomed to being listened to, calm, thoughtful, polished by years of being considered wise. "Job," he began, "you have counseled many. You have strengthened weak hands. Your words have upheld him who was falling. But now it comes to you, and you faint. Is not your fear of God your confidence, and your integrity your hope?" Job's eyes did not move. He sat like a shadow carved into stone, his gaze fixed somewhere far beyond the horizon. Eliphaz continued, his tone softening into a sorrow that almost sounded sincere. "If you return to the Almighty, you will be built up. Remove iniquity far from your tents. Then you will lay your treasure in the dust, and the Almighty will be your gold. You will make your prayer to him, and he will hear you. You will decree a thing, and it shall be established for you." The words drifted across the space between them, polished, reasoned, safe. Truth wrapped in error, comfort coated in assumption. Job's lips parted slightly, as though tasting the bitterness of the counsel. Eliphaz spoke not from cruelty, but from fear, the fear that the world must make sense, that righteousness must guarantee reward, that pain must always have a cause. But Job had lived long enough in silence to know that the deepest things often have none. He raised his head. His eyes were hollowed by sleeplessness, his voice cracked by weeping, yet the words came clear and steady. My complaint is bitter, he said. My hand is heavy because of my groaning. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I could come even to his seat. I would lay my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would know the words which he would answer me and understand what he would say. He paused, and the wind carried the quiet like a sigh through broken walls. Behold, he continued, I go forward, but he is not there, and backward, but I cannot perceive him. On the left hand, where he works, I cannot behold him. He hides himself on the right hand, that I cannot see him. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold. The words cut the air like lightning across a starless night. Eliphaz lowered his eyes, uncertain now whether to answer or to listen. For the first time, all three friends saw that Job's faith was not dead. It was alive, burning, refining, alive in agony. He had not abandoned God. He was chasing him into the dark. But Bildad, who prized order above understanding, could not stay silent. He stood, straightening his robes, his mind turning to the verses he knew by heart, the ancient sayings that had always explained the world. His tone was respectful, yet beneath it lay a firmness that would not bend. Dominion and fear belong to him, he declared. He makes peace in his high places. Is there any number to his armies? His light shines on all. How then can man be righteous before God? How can one born of woman be pure? He looked at Job with pity that felt like judgment. Even the moon is not bright, and the stars are not pure in his sight. How much less man, who is but a worm? Job's eyes lifted to him, not with anger, but with an exhaustion so complete it seemed holy. His voice came as a whisper that carried farther than any shout. How can man be righteous? He repeated, almost to himself. If only you would hide me in the grave, that you would conceal me until your wrath is past, that you would appoint me a set time and remember me. He looked upward, his voice trembling. If a man dies, shall he live again? All the days of my hard service I will wait until my change comes. The friends exchanged glances. Job's words were no longer about guilt or innocence. They had moved into a place beyond argument, the fragile realm of hope. A hope too wild for men who built their comfort on certainty. Zophar, the youngest and the most zealous, could not endure the silence. His faith was sharp-edged, untested, loud. He stepped forward, fire in his eyes. Do you not know this from of old? He cried. The triumphing of the wicked is short. The joy of the hypocrite is but for a moment. Though his pride mounts to the heavens and his head reaches the clouds, he will perish forever. His children will seek the favor of the poor, and his bones will lie in the dust. The heavens will reveal his iniquity, and the earth will rise up against him. The certainty in his tone struck harder than any sword. He believed he was defending God's honor, but in truth, he was crushing a man whose only crime was honesty. Job's shoulders shook, not with fear, but with the weight of disappointment. He had not asked for condemnation. He had asked for compassion. He turned toward Zophar, his voice calm, but edged with grief. Miserable comforters are you all, he said. Shall words of wind have an end? Or what provokes you that you answer? I also could speak as you do. If your soul were in my soul's place, I could heap up words against you, but I would strengthen you with my mouth. The moving of my lips would relieve your grief. The words hit like truth seldom does, heavy, undeniable, unanswerable. Eliphaz looked away. Bildad shifted uneasily. Zophar opened his mouth, then closed it again. Job turned his gaze toward the heavens. The light had faded to a dull gold, clouds gathering on the edge of the sky. Even now, he said, behold, my witness is in heaven, and he who testifies for me is on high. My friends scorn me, but my eye pours out tears to God. Oh, that one might plead for a man with God, as a man pleads for his neighbor. For a moment, none of them breathed. His words carried something larger than himself, as if some divine echo spoke through his pain. The friends fell silent. They had come to explain, but explanation crumbled before such honesty. Job was teaching them without meaning to, that faith is not the absence of questions, but the courage to ask them while still believing. Hours passed. The debate rose and fell like waves crashing against an unmovable rock. Eliphaz accused, Bildad reasoned, Zophar judged. Each believed he was defending the holiness of God. Each tried to restore order to what they could not understand. But Job, though broken, refused to lie. Till I die, he said, I will not put away my integrity from me. My righteousness I hold fast, and will not let it go. My heart shall not reproach me as long as I live. His voice, once quiet, now carried the weight of conviction sharpened by pain. He looked to the horizon, where the first flashes of distant lightning cracked the sky. Storm clouds gathered slow and magnificent, rolling across the plain with a sound like the breath of creation itself. The wind began to change, a low hum that stirred the dust around his feet. Job's eyes followed it, sensing what his friends could not. He spoke softly, almost in awe, as God lives, who has taken away my right, and the Almighty who has made my soul bitter. While my breath is in me, my lips will not speak wickedness, nor my tongue utter deceit. He paused, his hand pressed to his chest, as if to steady the life still in him. Oh, that I knew where he was, he whispered, that I might come to his throne and hear his voice. Behold, I cry out, violence, but I am not answered. I call for help, but there is no justice. The last words tore through the still air like thunder before the storm. He fell to his knees, trembling under the weight of his confession. When I looked for good, evil came to me. When I waited for light, darkness fell. A silence followed, not the silence of peace, but of awe. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, listening. The friends said no more. They had spoken their wisdom. They had defended their doctrines. But Job's truth stood taller, raw, bleeding, undefeated. And somewhere beyond the horizon, in the deep chambers of heaven, the silence began to move. The storm that would one day speak was forming, gathering wind, fire, and voice. The debate of men was nearing its end. The dialogue of God was about to begin. The sky above Uz turned bronze by afternoon, a weary sun hanging low behind gathering clouds. The air felt charged, like the world was holding its breath. In the distance, thunder whispered over the horizon, faint but promising. The friends sat around Job in a broken circle, the dust of the plains swirling lazily between them. None spoke for a long time. The arguments had drained them, yet the silence was heavier than their words. Eliphaz, old and deliberate, traced patterns in the sand with his finger before lifting his eyes to Job. His face was lined with sincerity and sorrow, the kind that believes it is right. You vex your own soul, he said softly. You speak as if wisdom will save you, but the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. If you return to him, you shall be restored. If you humble yourself before him, your end will be peace. Job's lips moved, almost smiling. Peace, he echoed, the word tasting foreign. You speak of peace as if it can exist in this ruin. He looked out across the barren land, the carcasses of trees standing black against the haze. If I have sinned, he said, tell me my transgression. Show me my offense. But you accuse me without cause, as though the suffering of the righteous must always conceal a hidden crime. Eliphaz sighed. Shall a mortal be more righteous than God? Job looked at him, and for a moment there was compassion in his gaze. No, he said quietly, but perhaps a man may seek him, not in pride, but in pain. The wind shifted. Dust rose in spirals around their feet. Bildad, who had been staring into the distance, spoke next, his tone clipped, like one reasoning with a child. Job, if your words were true, then the foundations of the world would be shaken. God does not pervert justice. If you were pure and upright, surely he would awaken for you and restore your dwelling to righteousness. The light of the wicked is put out, and the spark of his fire does not shine. Job turned his gaze toward him, weary but unflinching. Yes, he said, The light of the wicked is put out. But what of the innocent crushed beside them? What of the poor who cry for help and hear nothing in reply? Bildad's jaw tightened. We cannot question the judge of all the earth. Then what are we doing here? Job asked. The question was simple, but it struck like thunder. If he cannot be questioned, then what is faith but silence? None of them answered. Zophar shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the horizon where lightning flickered beyond the hills. The wicked's triumph is short, he muttered, his confidence weakening. Though his pride mounts to the heavens, he will vanish like a dream. This is the portion of the godless man from God. Job's laugh startled them. It was not cruel. It was hollow, the sound of a man who has stopped expecting comfort. You speak of the wicked as if I have not seen them prosper, he said. I have watched them build houses that reach the sky, fill their barns, multiply their children. They die in their beds, surrounded by ease, and men praise their name. Tell me, where is their punishment? The earth covers their blood. Their sons dance in the streets. Zophar said nothing. Job's voice grew softer. If the Almighty hides his face, who then can behold him, whether he acts in mercy or in judgment? He overturns mountains, and they know it not. He shakes the earth out of its place. He commands the sun, and it does not rise. He seals off the stars. He looked at his friends one by one, and yet he watches over me. I do not understand it, but I know it. He slays me, yet will I trust him. The words hung in the heavy air, ancient and eternal, trembling with the weight of every soul that would ever suffer in silence. The wind began to rise, carrying the first cool scent of rain. A veil of clouds stretched across the sky, darkening the plains. Job stood, unsteady but upright, his form framed against the coming storm. I cry out, he said, but there is no answer. I stand, but he does not regard me. He has fenced up my way so that I cannot pass, and he has set darkness in my paths. He has stripped me of my glory and taken the crown from my head. He breaks me down on every side, and I am gone. My hope has he uprooted like a tree. He paused, closing his eyes. The memories came, his children's laughter, his fields at harvest, the warmth of his wife's hand before despair had stolen it. Have pity on me, he said softly. Have pity on me, O my friends, for the hand of God has touched me. Why do you, like him, pursue me? Are you not satisfied with my flesh? Eliphaz lowered his head. Even he, proud as he was, could not bear the weight of that plea. Job's tone shifted. Oh, that my words were written. Oh, that they were engraved with an iron pen and let in the rock forever. For I know, his voice trembled, that my Redeemer lives, and he shall stand at last upon the earth. And though this body be destroyed, yet in my flesh I shall see God. The sky flashed with lightning. The words seemed to strike something unseen, as if heaven itself shuddered at their truth. The friends stared. The declaration was too vast for their understanding. Redemption, life after death, a God who could be both silent and still just. Such thoughts were foreign to men who lived by rules and reasons. Job sank back to his knees, trembling but resolute. Whom I shall see for myself, he whispered, and not another. My heart faints within me. The rain began, slow at first, each drop darkening the ash around him like ink upon parchment. Thunder rolled closer, not yet the voice of God, but the rehearsal of it. Eliphaz spoke one last time, his tone softer now, tinged with doubt. Job, he said, behold, God is mighty, and despises not any. He delivers the poor in affliction, and opens their ears in oppression. If they obey and serve him, they shall spend their days in prosperity. Job raised his head, rain streaking through the dirt on his face. And if they do not, he asked. Eliphaz hesitated. Then they perish. Job smiled faintly, almost tenderly. Then we have all perished, he said. Every one of us. Even you, old friend. Only the dust remains faithful. The storm thickened. The sky grew darker still, the horizon glowing faintly white where lightning cracked the air. The friends drew their cloaks tighter, uneasy. None could explain what was happening, but all could feel it, the approach of something immense. Job closed his eyes and lifted his face toward the wind. "When he has tested me," he murmured again, "I shall come forth as gold." The words were no longer defiance. They were surrender. Not the surrender of defeat, but of endurance. His friends looked at him and saw what they had missed all along. Not rebellion, but refinement. They had mistaken his honesty for arrogance, his questions for sin. But now, as the storm gathered around them, even they began to sense it. Job was not God's enemy. He was his mirror, reflecting human pain back toward the heavens. Lightning split the sky, white and wild. The plains lit up for a heartbeat, showing the faces of four men small beneath the vastness of creation. The sound followed a moment later, a deep roar that rolled through the ground, shaking dust from the stones. Job did not move. His eyes stayed closed. The rain fell harder now, soaking the earth, washing the ashes into dark rivers at his feet. He spoke once more, so softly that the others had to lean close to hear him. "He will answer me," he said. "Not today, not perhaps even in this life, but he will answer." Eliphaz wiped rain from his beard. Bildad looked toward the hills. Zophar muttered something like a prayer, and far above them, unseen, the storm continued to gather. The wind howled low, circling them like a breath around a candle flame. Thunder cracked again, closer this time. The sky pulsed with light, veins of fire threading across the clouds. For a brief moment, Job's cloak lifted in the gale, and his figure stood outlined against the lightning, small, frail, yet unyielding. It was as though heaven and earth had locked eyes through him, and neither would look away. The rain turned. The rain turned cold. The first gusts of real wind swept across the valley, bending the grass flat, shaking the remnants of the ruined home behind them. Eliphaz shouted something, but the sound was swallowed by thunder. Bildad stumbled back a few steps, shielding his face. Zophar pressed his hands against his ears. Only Job remained still, his arms slightly raised, not in protest, not even in question, just open, like a man ready to listen. And somewhere deep within the gathering darkness, something moved, something older than time, stronger than grief, vast as the sky itself. It was not yet the voice, but its breath, the prelude of the answer. The storm was no longer a storm. It was a throne descending. The friends fell to their knees. Job bowed his head, and the heavens prepared to speak.